Okay, let's do this. Hi, my name is Andrea. I'm 19. I'm an aspiring author, and I am currently writing a YA contemporary fantasy. Welcome to my first video. If you see me looking down a lot, it's because I have my notes right here. This is kind of planned, kind of improvised, so I'm sorry if it gets a little rambly. Basically, I've always wanted to make videos about reading and writing, so I figured I might as well just turn on the camera and go for it. So today I want to talk about something that I have particularly been thinking about in this step in the writing process, which I'm at right now, which is character development. I got to a point where I was a little bit stuck. I didn't know what changes to make to my draft, but something fell off, like something had to change, but I wasn't sure what was missing, what to add to it. Then I realized that I didn't really know my characters. Plot comes really easy to me. It's really easy to just figure out what is going to happen, and to make characters and just kind of assign attributes to them that I need them to have for them to complete those actions. But I didn't really know them. They didn't even feel real to me, so they weren't gonna feel real to other people. So lately I have been working on getting to know my characters more, and I thought I'd share some little tips and things that I've been trying out. Now, keep in mind that I'm not a published author. I am in no way a professional. I'm just making this video to kind of start documenting my journey so I can look back on, maybe connect with other aspiring authors, and I don't know, just share some resources and things that have been working for me. Things that I'm learning along the way. Maybe they'll be helpful to you. Maybe we can exchange information and you can teach me something new. But yeah, so don't take this at all as something like, oh, you have to try these things. This is the way to do it. I'm just trying to figure things out as well. Okay, so the first thing I do, even before I started going on this whole getting to know my characters better thing, like when I first started my story, you do a character profile. I like to do or use a format from this page called Creative Writing Now. I'll try to link to it down below. It's a really great profile, very detailed. So what I do is I take that profile and I add my own questions. Some of them can be just things that you feel are useful to know and might not be on there, like, I don't know, zodiac signs, I don't know, stuff like that. And others can be very specific to your story. For example, if I'm writing about witches, I'll probably include questions asking about their powers and anything related to their magic. If my story has a caste system, I'll probably have questions like, what caste are they in? Stuff like that. Stuff specific to that one story. Okay, so these next two tips that I'm going to include, I actually got from two different YouTubers. They're on AuthorTube, and they're both amazing. The first one is Jenna Moresi, and it basically, the main part of this tip is to include in your character profile their life experience. And she can explain this way better than I can, but basically if you watch her videos on how to create believable characters, she talks about how she thinks about their role, the role that they fit, their motivation to fulfill that role, their strengths and weaknesses, and their life experience. And they all connect to one another. So basically I watched Jenna Moresi's video and I tried to apply all of this. I tried to figure all of this out, and I included that in my character profile as well. So the other YouTuber that I was referencing is Kim Chance. She recently made a video on making character profiles, and she included a lot of great little tips and details, but the main thing that I was interested in is her motivation charts. I actually posted about this on Instagram as well, because I thought it was such an interesting idea. For every character, she makes a chart where she puts down their motivation. Now, she writes their motivation at the beginning of the story, their motivation after the inciting incident, and their motivation by the end of the story. So you can kind of see how they develop throughout this story. I was thinking of another word I could say. I feel like I'm being so repetitive, but you get it. Basically, you see how they develop and change. And I thought this was a great idea, so I am including a motivation chart on each of my character profiles for all of my characters. Now, this fourth tip I also heard somewhere. I'm not sure if they did it exactly how I'm doing it, and I'm not sure if I heard it maybe from Jenna Moresi or maybe from Caddy-tastic. I'm not sure, but if I remember, I'll put it down in the description as well. But the fourth thing that I do is I am making relationship spreadsheets. So basically, for all of my characters, at least the important characters, I'm writing down their stories between each other. The more important it is, the more detailed it is. I write down a little background, if they knew each other before the story started, if they did, what was their relationship like up until the story began. If they didn't, then it doesn't matter. And I kind of write down how the relationship progresses. Usually I do it kind of like a beginning, middle, end thing. And then I include it in a little spreadsheet. I'm going to make a spreadsheet of all my character relationships, kind of a summary of the nature of the relationships. So that way, while I'm outlining, when I'm writing a scene, especially scenes that include several characters or, kind of thinking up subplots and stuff, I have this visual of how all my characters interact with one another and how they feel about each other. So the fifth thing I do is kind of something I thought up myself when I was working on my characters and their profiles, and I make another spreadsheet. This one is kind of a spreadsheet of their traits. So for each one of my characters, I write down 2 or 3 strengths and 1 or 2 weaknesses. And then I'm going to put them all on a spreadsheet so that I can kind of have that visual as well. So when I'm outlining, when I have maybe a really important action scene, something important is going on in my story, I can kind of look at it and see how each one of my characters could be useful and how they could maybe set the others back. I feel like this is especially helpful because I'm kind of writing an action type story, or no, not action, an adventure type story, and I have a bit of a cast, a crew, like a team. So since they all had to work together, I wanted to have this sort of representation of what each one of them brings to the table. The sixth thing is something that might sound a little bit obvious, but that I didn't really do before, and it is to really research their interests and hobbies. This also applies for anything else that might make them stand out or that might really impact their life and personality, like where they're from, if they've gone through something traumatic, if they've been through a divorce, etc., etc. But I feel like it mainly applies for, their hobbies, interests, job. Maybe because, like I said, I'm writing an adventure type story where they're kind of a team, so this really influences in what I was talking about before, what they're useful for, what they're good at, what they bring to the table. Either way, the point is that for each of your characters, you really research their hobbies. For example, I looked up stuff like how do painters see the world, traits you need to be a good lawyer, things that surfing has taught me, traits of a good doctor, stuff like that. So this gives you an idea of what personality traits they have, things that make them a strong teacher or a bad teacher, you know, what sets them back in their goals and their interests. And it also helps you see through their eyes. This helped me a lot with my two main characters because my story has 2 points of view, and one of the things I was really struggling with was kind of differentiating them and figuring out how each of them saw the world, saw the situations that they were both going through. So looking into these things helped me figure out why they like the things they like, how they think, how they're different from one another, and things like that. Not to mention that you are going to have to research anyway, so that when these things come up in the story, you at least kind of sound like you know what you're talking about, you know? You can't really have a character who's, I don't know, a businessman and not have the slightest idea of what it is that they actually do, what it is, well, you know, what their job is, what they might talk like, you know? So, yeah, it sounds like it's an important one. It sounds like something that might be obvious to you, but I hadn't realized how deeply I have to research these things and how much it helps shape these characters in your mind. This last one is kind of a silly one, and it really isn't necessary at all. Like I said, the other ones aren't necessary, or at least it isn't necessary to do them in the way that I'm doing them. But they're things you're probably going to have to do, you know? You're going to have to research them, you're going to have to figure out their motivations, you're going to have to probably write down the stuff that you know about them. So they're things that you're probably going to do in some way or another. This one is more for fun, but it does actually help. At least it has for me. And it's to just kind of have fun with it. For example, you can have a dream cast or make face claims. If you don't know what that means, it's how you imagine a character. You kind of assign an actor or something like that to them. And that's how you picture them looking physically. So I've done that for all of my characters. This is the first story that I've ever done that with. I've never done it in the past, but I've assigned an actor to each of my characters, and it's come kind of naturally, except for maybe 2 characters that I have changed a few times because I can't quite decide what they look like. But it's really fun. It's fun opening my notes and seeing these pictures that I've saved and being like, yeah, these are my characters. Look at them all together, you know? And it helps you see them as a real person. I don't know. I feel like I don't have that much of an imagination, to be honest. I hear people being like, oh, when I'm reading, I like create this whole world in my head. I don't know. Sometimes for me, it's kind of hard to picture details, you know, visual details, and that's what characters are like for me when I'm writing and reading. I can be like, oh, they have long brown hair, their face is like this, but I don't actually visualize it. So it's kind of helpful and fun to put an actual human face that I can see in my mind to this character. And same for mood boards and stuff like that. It sounds kind of like a waste of time, but for me, it's been helpful to kind of set the atmosphere of my story, you know, to look up pictures and stuff that remind me of my story. And I've done that for characters as well. I kind of create little boards or images, collages, that remind me of this character. That's something else that I'd be interested in talking more about, because I do that a lot, you know. It's fun things that can kind of help you set the scene of your story, help you get into your world. So if that's something that you'd be interested in hearing about, let me know, because I think it'd be fun to talk about. So yeah, those are some of the tips that I have to help develop your characters. Those are things that I have been doing and that have helped me a lot. And, you know, coming from someone who has trouble with characters and character development. And that's it. I'm sorry if the video was rambly. I'm sorry if I kind of changed angles or something. I don't really have a camera. I'm filming this from my phone. And yeah, I'm not sure if anyone will really be interested in watching this, but I had fun making it, and I feel like I'm probably gonna make more. I might try to upload weekly. So if you watch this, let me know if it was at least kind of helpful to you, if you have any tips for me, if there's anything else you'd be interested in talking about. I have a Twitter, a Goodreads, and an Instagram that I devote to talking about stuff like this. So I'll link to all that down below. I can follow you back on Instagram. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching. There they are. Unicorn socks.